Are there words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control.
We think we have it very well under control. We pretty much shut it down. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle, it will disappear. We can hold that down, as we're saying, to 100,000. It's a horrible number. We all together have done a very good job.
As the nation surpassed 4 million COVID cases and over 145,000 deaths this week.
It's something that we have tremendous control of. I think we're going to win faster than people think, I hope.
You're going to lose a number of people to the flu, but you're going to lose more people by putting a country into a massive recession or depression. The virus is going to disappear. I feel about vaccines like I feel about tests. This is going to go away without a vaccine.
The coronavirus itself, SARS-CoV-2, is here to stay.
As the U.S. surpasses a staggering 400,000 deaths, the incoming CDC director says another 100,000 could die in the next month.
It is what it is.
It's going to fade away. We're in very good shape.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your response to this crisis?
I'd rate it a 10. I think we've done a great job.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Who's got a hammer?
Big, massive dumps.
The nation. Boebert Nation. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. It's Monday, brand new week, brand new show, fun times, more topics. As usual, we're going to be dunking on conservatives, of course. We got QAnoners that are threatening hospitals. Wonderful. We have Giuliani. The hilarious Giuliani vids. You're going to enjoy that a lot. We got Donald Trump doing weird cult propaganda. I'm not kidding. So I'm going to dive into this, the Moonies, a little bit here. Interesting. The Moonies. I don't think I've ever talked about them before, but, it's the first time for everything. We got Melania, of course, a little bit of drama there, and we got, of course, Lauren Boebert, some examples of her corruption. So, fun times. Lots of fun. As usual. So, before we get into it, though, I want to thank Crazy Hawaiian and PA for resubbing for a month at Tier 1. Appreciate that. It's 10 months. It's almost a year. Congratulations. Thank you for joining our Twitch community. Stoned Interlocutor also resubbed for a month at Tier 1. Thank you for being a subscriber for 7 months. Really appreciate that. Fun times. That was a really super creepy speech. Had never heard of the Moonies before. Oh, you're in for a treat. I almost said tweet. Although, we may have a couple of those. Fun. So, let's see. Thank you all for the new follows. I see some people coming in here from Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie. Fantastic. Glad to see you. Hopefully that show went incredibly well. Yes, a lot of you. Awesome. All right. Before I dive into it, I just want to address there's some stories today that actually broke, and I think it's less broke, honestly, than was leaked. And I'm talking about, of course, the push to raise corporate taxes. So, look, right now we're in the middle of this negotiating the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill. Joe Manchin says absolutely not. No way. Kirsten Sinema, Absolutely not. No way. Oh, it's too expensive. It's too expensive. We don't have the money for it. And so there was a drafted plan that had been leaked that says, oh, well, that's okay. We're going to cover $2.9 trillion of it by rolling back some of Donald Trump's tax cuts for the rich. So now, all right. So the thing about that is that leaked, usually when something like that comes out, it's because somebody wanted it to come out. And already after the so-called leak, Democrats, yes, did come out and say, yes, this is part of our plan to try to raise enough money to allay the concerns of people like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Now, the issue, of course, with that, and maybe I'll save that commentary until after I give you some of the details here. So now, as I said, they want to increase taxes to corporations. All right, now we're talking. Hey, right now, corporate tax rate is 21%, thanks to Donald Trump. So what would they raise it to? Well, if you read the Washington Post, if you're reading the New York Times, the most significant tax hikes on the rich and corporations in decades. Oh my God, look at that. They're raising taxes on the rich. Significant, huge. They're considering raising it to 26.5%. So 5.5%, essentially. That's it. And I say that's it because under Obama, it was 35%. So it's so you're not even going to raise it to where it was under Obama. Come on. And again, if you read mainstream media, and look, again, I'm in favor of tax hikes for corporations and the wealthy. Obviously, they have to pay their fair share. In fact, tons of companies have paid nothing in taxes. And so, yes, we do need to take that money from these companies so that they can pay their fair share of taxes, so these companies don't get so large and so powerful and have so much influence on politics. That's why we need to tax the rich. That's why we need to tax these multinational corporations. But 26.5%, no, that's not nearly enough. And going back to what I was saying about, will this be effective at getting the deficit hawks, people like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, to go and agree with it? No, because it's not about, understand that this is not about the debt. This is not about pay for his debts and deficits. No. Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are against the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill and want to pare it down because they don't like what's in it. They don't like the focus on human infrastructure, for one, because it, God forbid, actually helps their constituents. And number two, if you're going to pair this with corporate tax hikes, well, who do you think funds Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema? Corporations, their donors. They're going to get rather upset at this entire thing. And look, again, I've talked about how Joe Manchin has gone into meetings with, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and gets all this money from his own corporate investments. And so anything that touches his income, those investments, and the donors, and the campaign contributions going to Joe Manchin, sorry, it's not going to fly. This will do nothing. But what it will do, and this is my thought process on this, okay? So what I think this will do, obviously, the media is already getting people primed for, oh my God, look at this gigantic tax increase on corporations and the wealthy. That's kind of going to derail the movement of what progressives are asking for, which is a far higher and more robust corporate tax rate. So, there's that. And again, you've got the media crowing about it. And yes, I do think this was released partly to put pressure on Joe Manchin a little bit. and also to say, look, the Democrats are trying, they're trying. And then when it gets shut down, well, I mean, that's a different story, I guess. Again, I think it would be great if we actually did raise taxes on corporations, but I don't think that this is going to move anybody. It's not enough for progressives. We'll take it, but it's not enough for us. And it certainly isn't going to change the minds of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. And it's because, once again, they work for their donors. They're still going to, by the way, they're still likely going to, and this is part of the song and dance, we will get an infrastructure bill, but it won't be $3.5 trillion. It's going to be lower. They'll go lower still, and then use this as well. We could have gone lower, but we managed to raise taxes just a little bit, possibly. Again, I don't know what kind of pressure is being levied on Joe Manchin right now and Kyrsten Sinema, but I really don't think any of this is going to go through without massive reductions in the size of the bill, and mainly, like, okay, so it could pass, but with a lot of the climate stuff stripped out. That's the only situation that I could see Joe Manchin being in favor and actually grudgingly allowing this bill to go through. And of course, they'll claim, oh, it's a little bit less expensive, so that's why I allowed it through. But in reality, they're going to try to strip out as many of the climate provisions as possible and then say, well, it was the increased tax rate, which a lot of companies really don't pay at this point anyway. And so and there'll always be write-offs and things like that and loopholes for these companies to go through. So they might actually accept a higher tax rate if they strip out the climate provision. So that's my read of the situation. But again, not 100% sure on anything, obviously, but I do know that the media is having a field day saying that this is historic. Wow, look at the progress. Look at Democrats. They're going to raise taxes they're going to repeal part of Trump's tax cuts. When in reality, of course, it, yes, repeals some of them, but most will remain intact, and corporations still will end up paying the least amount of taxes, I believe, they ever have. So, there you go. Moving on, let's get into the first story, huh? They should raise taxes on the wealthy, and corporations will leave 8% to make it that Trump created anyway. And again, it's not so much about debt. Taxes really aren't about spending anyway. What taxes are is to make sure that wealth does not flow and power all to the top so that they can buy out our government. Every billionaire created is a policy failure, in my view. Nobody should be a billionaire. And taxes are a way to do that. All right. Let's do it. Yeah, I'm partial to like the 70 to 90% for the top marginal rates. But that's just me. And yes, this coffee mug is cliche as all hell. A hospitalized COVID-19 denier has unfortunately succumbed to the virus Monday. Now, the woman, Veronica Wolski, was a prominent Illinois booster of QAnon. So it's QAnon. She had recorded herself hanging pro-QAnon banners over bridges and being anti-mask. So she would flout mask laws in stores, not really laws, but of course mask mandates, and then would say that, oh, I have never once worn a mask. And then, as often as ones who test their assumptions in the face of irrefutable evidence, they find consequences. If only someone had warned them. If only someone had said, masks are effective at controlling the spread of COVID-19. So not only did she catch the virus, which ironically QAnon, they believe it's fake anyway, and therefore did not protect herself from wearing the mask or getting the devil's needle juice in her arm. The 5G tracking mark of the beast 666. Vaccine, yeah. Well, she didn't do any of that, and she died. But I mean, it seems like a pretty clear-cut case of what happened here. But wait, hold on. Apparently, her and her QAnon following had specifically demanded the use of anti-parasitic medication, ivermectin. Oh. So now the Daily Beast Will Sommer reported that after she was hospitalized in Chicago 2 weeks ago with COVID-19, Wolski supporters and QAnon and other far-right groups besieged the medical center with hundreds of phone calls and even some death threats demanding that she receive ivermectin, whose effectiveness as a COVID-19 treatment remains unproven. So now top QAnon leaders like former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn embraced her cause, pro-Trump lawyer Lynn Wood calling the hospital and demanding that she receive ivermectin shortly before her death. And of course, the question, is why? It hasn't been shown to be effective against COVID-19. Why give something that's shown to be not effective or even more damaging to somebody's liver, for example, for somebody who's already doing incredibly poorly? It doesn't make any sense. Why didn't they call for monoclonal antibodies? I mean, that is an effective treatment for patients with a high risk of progression of the disease, of the virus, which, of course, look, I don't know. Maybe they did, and maybe it just didn't take. I don't know her specific course of treatments or her case. Hell, I don't even know if her insurance would have covered that, or if she had the money to be able to cover that. I mean, the average hospital stay as a result of COVID-19, it's not free. It's $38,000. And that's if you're lucky enough to survive. It's expensive to get COVID-19 in this country, or to get anything in this country. And so I don't know her medical history. I don't know her comorbidities. I don't know anything like that. And so at this point, look, it's pretty much up to the doctor to determine the best course of treatment, not cultists. And of course, I'm not saying that doctors haven't made mistakes, whatever. But here's the thing. Why use something that's unproven? I mean, it works on worms, sure. It works on worms. It works on lice. It works on the worms that get in your eyes that cause river blindness. I mean, that's why it won a Nobel Prize, because it actually helped river blindness. However, again, this doesn't work on a virus. I mean, yes, it also doesn't work on brain worms, apparently. That's one worm that it doesn't work on. But no. Studies have shown so far, and there are clinical trials that are going on in other countries. There's been pretty high use in India and Brazil. You know what those two things have in common? For one, they don't have access to the vaccine because we're hoarding it here in America. And so, of course, understandable, they are taking desperate measures, in those countries and trying pretty much everything they can. They're almost literally throwing everything under the kitchen sink at it, which is why we need to, of course, release the patent, allow these other countries to get access to vaccines or to be able to make their own vaccines. And so, yeah, that's my position on that. But the other thing they have in common too is they happen to be controlled by fascist right-wing leaders. Bolsonaro in Brazil, and of course Modi in India. So that's another thing, right? Right-wingers and weirdo cures tend to go, or weirdo treatments, whatever, tend to go hand in hand, honestly. But okay, as far as the studies have shown so far, ivermectin can have antiviral properties, but so far only at such high doses that it happens to be toxic in humans. So that's why it's ineffective as a treatment. Hey, you know what also kills viruses? Bleach. Setting yourself on fire also could kill the virus, but it's not a good treatment for an obvious reason. Don't do that. So that's why I have to add, what really is the best treatment for COVID-19 is actually prevention. Just don't get it. Do your best to avoid it. And again, this is more of common sense, and it's of course not 100% foolproof, of course, but generally, if you get the vaccine, you wear a mask. You're in an area with high levels of transmission, socially distance, and try to stay in them as much as possible. I get that it sucks, but you're safe. And here's the thing: if you try to avoid risky behaviors, it tends to help you. Again, not in every circumstance, of course. You can still do all the right things and end up with the COVID-19 infection. We've seen that happen a handful of times. But generally, you tend to be more safe when you avoid some of those more risky behaviors with the pandemic that is ongoing. It's almost like avoiding STIs. You use a condom to avoid STIs. All right, again, sucks, but at least you're safe, right? You don't want to get into an accident? Okay, well, drive carefully. If you do, use a seatbelt, have an airbag, so that you don't, fly out your window and smash into the middle of the pavement. I know if seatbelts right now were being debated as public policy, there would be a ton of right-wingers that are like, anti-seatbelt. Now, don't tread on me. I don't want seatbelts. Seatbelts are tyranny. There's always that kind of person. But anyway, again, you don't want the flu, get the flu shot, get the, wear the mask. You don't want COVID-19, get the COVID shot and wear the mask. And if you're wondering, by the way, why the flu has affected so few people since COVID-19, well, I mean, the answer is pretty obvious. People are masking and vaccinating and avoiding risky behavior. That's why the flu virus hasn't been killing as many people and hasn't been going around as much. It really is. It's simple. It really is simple. So now, she didn't follow that advice, which is fairly obvious. And so a lot of right-wing anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers have kind of done the same. And what do you know? They keep getting it and dying. It's a weird. It's almost as if there are consequences. But of course, since it is the right wing, since it is QAnon, well, it's never their fault. Obviously, it's always someone else. It's always a conspiracy. In fact, on Monday morning, Wood announced in a post on Telegram, which is infested with the right wing, not with right wing, but with Nazis, also on the right wing, that Wolski had died shortly after midnight and called her death a, quote, medical murder, and urged his followers to go to war. Medical murder. Wouldn't that just be murder? Medical murder is murder. I mean, again, this goes back to the discussion about. Weirdly enough, I'm going to draw the weirdest parallel you've ever seen, but stay with me, okay? Legitimate rape. There's no such thing as a legitimate rape. Rape is rape. Murder is murder. I don't understand how, they keep coming up with these super weird, it's not just apartheid. It's medical apartheid. It's medical murder, as opposed to traditional murder. But you know what? I know, super big brain take, right? Galaxy brain take, even. Well, okay. So now, there's an interesting logical pathway we can take from that. Stay with me, okay? So now you're saying for a hospital to deny certain medications, that would be considered medical murder, right? All right. Well, how about this? If the hospital refuses to treat your cancer or give you cancer drugs or give you insulin, for example, if you're diabetic, well, isn't that by extension murder? And therefore, in order to avoid that, just give out medication freely and accessible to everyone. I mean, think about it this way. People who gatekeep medication, could they not be considered to be a literal death panel? Let's expand this logic a little bit further. We're almost there, okay? So now if an insurance company denies you medications because you can't afford it, is that also considered murder? I mean, if you can't afford your insulin, right? If you have to pay money for life-saving drugs, well, that's also murder, right? Because that's medication that could have saved your life, right? Murder. Oh, wow. You know what? That kind of makes the case against for-profit healthcare, doesn't it? Because again, this is something, those situations, by the way, not getting your medication and dying as a result of not having things like insulin, medicine for your diabetes, and medicine for cancer, treatment for cancer. Well, that does happen all the time. 45,000 Americans die every year as a result of lack of health care in this country. Now, that wouldn't happen if everyone had health care, if everyone had insurance, if we had universal health care, if we had a single-payer system, or if we had a government national health service. Now, do you see QAnon talk about that, though? No, of course not. No, what they demand is the dewormer, which, again, not proven to work against COVID-19. and look, the reaction is so incredibly predictable here because it really does show you that it's not about saving lives. If they actually cared about saving lives, then they would be supporting things like Medicare for all. But they don't. It's not about saving lives. It's not about healthcare. What this is a culture war. It's a culture war issue now. And say they gave her ivermectin, which I don't know if they did or not. I'm assuming they didn't. And she died anyway. Even worse for the case if they actually had given her ivermectin. I don't believe they did. I think there's this. Now that I recall, there was a statement that the hospital put out and said we don't dispense ivermectin because it's not been approved by the FDA. Only for and what it has been in other countries has been subject of clinical trials. So we don't do any of that. But anyway, so say they had given her that, and she died anyway. Well, okay, well then, and by the way, that would have happened. She would have died anyway. But here's the thing, they would have said the same thing. Oh, medical murder. They didn't do it soon enough. They didn't do it quick enough. Or something. And then something, deep state, Bill Gates, people who've been vaccinated, they spread the spike protein to her. That's what they did. It's the vaccinated people that killed her. Because this is not about reality anymore with people. It's political identity. And us normal people don't get it, right? Because we look at that and we're like, well, obviously it's not approved. Not approved. There hasn't been any efficacy that has been shown. And so why are people going to the feed store if they can't get a prescription, which they most likely will not be able to do? So why are they going to the feed store and accidentally taking doses too big for them and going to poison control? Because that's what's going on here. That's what's going on here. Okay? And so, but here's the thing too. We mask up and vax not because we're liberals. I'm more left than a liberal. I definitely see the appeal of a socialistic model with democracy in the workplace instead of our current authoritarian, structure where the CEO and the board kind of lord over us like an unelected king. How un-American, by the way. Didn't we overthrow the king? King of England? Freedom. I believe in freedom, workplace freedom. But look, here's the thing. We don't wear that and vaccinate because we're of our political identity. I know plenty of conservatives that wear a mask and have vaccinated, and they do it not because it's a political identity, but because it's called protecting yourself. Okay? And so it's called common sense. And by the way, everyone at Fox News, Tucker Carlson included, has already taken the vaccine. Now, the difference is, of course, that Tucker Carlson doesn't give a damn about you. Neither does Laura Ingraham. Neither does Sean Hannity. They just don't. They don't give a damn. That's it. And of course, they'll tell you what they want, what you want to hear. And what you want to hear, if you're a viewer of them, is a reason to be selfish and ignorant and a way to own the libs. And QAnon, of course, will go a step further and give you the crazy. The end result, of course, is people like Veronica Wolski who have died, who dove right into it and believed all the stuff that she was told, ended up in the hospital, and now she's dead. That's it. That's what killed Veronica: stupidity. All right. Well, let's go to Giuliani. Let's have some fun. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani held his annual 9/11 dinner on Saturday evening. Obviously, that's the thing. Basically, the only thing that really famous for is 9/11. So, of course, I was mayor of 9/11 in New York, and I'm going to have a memorial dinner every single year since. All right. Well, again, that's the one thing that he's actually really famous for. Other than that, terrible mayor. But another thing that he might be famous for now is what I'm about to show you, his drunkenness.
Can you imagine that Tony Blinken or Miley? How's that guy a general? Jesus. The other day, he said that the Bagram Air Force Base is not strategically important. I wanted to grab his, what do you have, 5 stars, 10 stars, 12 stars? He has so many stars that come into his ears. I wanted to grab his stars, shove it down his throat and say, it's 400 miles from China, asshole! China is going to be our enemy for the next 40 years. You have an air base 400 miles from them and you're giving it up, idiot! Right. What the hell is wrong with you? Who paid you? Christ, that is crazy. I don't know. I shouldn't get into this. What Biden did in the last 2 weeks is freaking insane. It cannot be explained. 20 years ago, I did my job for the country. I'm very proud of it. But I did it because of them.
I love how there's a one guy in the audience that's like, yeah! Just the one guy. Pretty much. Okay. Hey, did you know that Rudy Giuliani was mayor on 9/11? I didn't know that. No, you can't go anywhere without noun, verb, 9/11. And that's it. That's, again, he's never going to let us forget. By the way, that's where never forget comes from. It's not from the 3,000, obviously, souls that were lost on that horrible day, or, of course, the hundreds of thousands of innocents that were killed in our subsequent wars on terror, are, soldiers that, or our veterans, I should say, that have endured years and years, 2 decades of, mental trauma and all that. No. It's Giuliani wanting us to never forget that he was mayor on that day. He is just riding that goodwill. And he has been riding that same goodwill train for the last 20 years. And then, of course, pissed it away, famously by supporting an insurrection of our own government. But to be fair, Rudy Giuliani has not shown the best judgment, likely because the guy is sauced 90% of the times. I know alcoholics, that guy is a total drunk. His liver right now is screaming, help me, help me. Please do something. He keeps drowning me in cheap scotch. Please do something. 100% chance that Rudy Giuliani does not does not buy Top Shelf. Why is that? It's a weird Freudian slip. The The reason he doesn't buy top shelf is because he's having to hustle Cameo for cash. He's broke. He's broke. And by the way, I've got another video here. This is him apparently trying to imitate the Queen of England. Take a look.
You did a wonderful job on September 11, and therefore I'm making you an honorary knight, commander of the Royal something or other. I turned down a knighthood because if you took a knighthood, you had to lose your citizenship. I know Prince Andrew is very questionable now. I never went out with him. Ever. Never had a drink with him. Never was with a woman or a young girl with him. Ever. One time, I met him in my office, and one time when we had the party. Right, Bernie? You were there.
All right, who wants to be Bernie right now? Like, dude, why would you say that? Honestly. Wait, I thought you said you never hung out with him. Except for that one time. He was in my office, and the time that we went to the party together, and then, Bernie, you were there, you know all about it, Bernie. I mean, maybe you were doing something off. I wasn't doing anything. No. Okay, buddy, yeah. You know what? Methinks thou hath protested too much. Again, this is like this video that I showed you. I'm going to show you that again, where he's just like, oh, drinking. I don't have a drinking problem. You have a drinking problem.
Have you ever struggled with alcohol?
Never at all. Never at all.
Were you drunk during those interviews when they said you were?
Absolutely not. I don't think I've ever done an interview drunk. I have sometimes. I mean, I drink normally. I like scotch. I drink scotch.
So you do not believe that you have a drinking problem?
I know. I don't believe it. I know I'm not. I mean, no, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm probably function more effectively than 90% of the population.
I'm functioning. I mean, I function better than 90% of the population. I don't have a problem. I like scotch. I drink scotch. I like scotch. It's got a little bit of scotch. I like scotch. You like scotch, right? I get home from work. I get a scotch. I go to work. I get a scotch. I go to a party. I get 12 scotches. What? I like scotch. I'm not a drunk. I'm functional. Yeah, okay. Okay, man. Sure. Again with that liver. Help me, please. Please do something. I'm dying here. Okay. No. As for the knighthood, getting to something a little bit serious. The knighthood was honorary. Okay. To get an honorary knighthood, you actually don't have to receive renounce your citizenship in order to receive it. In fact, Giuliani actually accepted the honorary title and was named Giuliani Knight Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire for his outstanding help and support to bereaved British families in New York. Oops. I think he forgot about that. Honestly. Again, if you're an honorary knight, well, that's different than actually being knighted, which, again, you do have to be a British citizen for that. So a little bit of clarification there. Super bizarre. So now, the reaction, because that's fun. Former federal prosecutor Philip Kowski did post clips of this, speaking to the crowd, and said this, quote, Rudy rolled into the 9/11 dinner drunk out of his mind tonight. Here he is giving his Queen Elizabeth impression and assuring the audience that he was never with a young girl and Prince Andrew. I'm not sure I've ever seen someone give a speech at a formal occasion as drunk as Rudy Giuliani is right now at the 9/11 dinner. Of course, you had Rolling Stone Peter Wade calling it a, quote, rambling, nearly incoherent speech that led many on Twitter to question his level of intoxication. For good reason. Good reason. He responded to the haters with, I'm not as think as you drunk I am. Actually, he didn't. That's a joke. A joke. A bad one, but it's a joke. Kind of like Rudy. All right. All right. Jeez. Moving on. Let's go to weirdo Mooney propaganda. Former President Donald Trump spent much of September 11th doing weird things. I believe he did commentary for a boxing match, and then followed it up by doing Korean extremist religious propaganda. Huh. Well, that's a big switch from commentary, which is fun, on 9/11, to speaking for the Unification Church. On Saturday, he spoke at this conference organized by billionaire Hak Ja Han Moon, the widow of Reverend Sung Myung Moon, who founded the aforementioned Unification Church, which is again, a cult. Moon founded the church in South Korea in 1954 before moving to the U.S. in 1971. Trump was a featured keynote speaker at the Rally of Hope event. I'm going to show you some of his speech, and then I'm going to break down who are the Moonies and what effect are they having in politics. Take a look.
I want to thank the Universal Peace Federation, and in particular, Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon, a tremendous person, for her incredible work on behalf of peace all over the world. Her story of escaping from North Korea at 5 years old, at the outset of the Korean War, is an amazing example of the power of faith in Almighty God. I also want to thank her late husband, Reverend Moon, for founding the Washington Times, an organization for which I have tremendous respect and admiration. As president, I knew that I could not simply sit by and wait for this problem to get worse. Every administration before me had failed, and that's why I was determined to pursue a different approach. The United States took an unyielding stand militarily, diplomatically, and economically. We made it clear to all that we would never be threatened with nuclear weapons. And as many of you will remember, the rhetoric got very, very tough, nasty, and mean. I knew that while any leader can wage war, it takes true courage to pursue a chance for peace. In a few decades, the inspiration that they've caused for the entire planet is unbelievable. And I congratulate you again and again.
Okay, so that was weird. Very strange. What's with the background? Again, super strange stuff going on here. Also, you might have noticed that he can't stop fidgeting. He can't stand still. Like he's like moving around. He's a tremendous. Okay, all right. I don't know what's going on here. Weirdo. But okay, so let's get into the substance, right? So in that, of course, he talks about, we did great. My administration was really tough on North Korea. And that's why we got absolutely nothing. I mean, tremendous. Now, look, I supported the effort to denuclearize North Korea. I think that's great. Unfortunately, he failed. Didn't work. In fact, according to the New York Times, who published an article on March 26th of this year, after a Kim-Trump summit collapsed without a deal in Hanoi on February 2019, North Korea resumed a series of short-range ballistic missile tests from May 2019 until March of last year, when the tests were halted amid the coronavirus pandemic. And so, not really a result of anything that he did, kind of the whole worldwide pandemic that happened. Had Trump's diplomacy worked, and I wish it would have, there wouldn't actually be a need for tests. There wouldn't be nuclear weapons in North Korea, and they'd be on a path in denuclearization. I actually think that should be the goal for every country. There's no reason that anyone needs nuclear weapons. Honestly, it doesn't really do anybody any good if we have enough weapons to destroy the entire fucking world several times over. But you know, especially if you have that capability in the hands of someone who is insane. Speaking of insane, let's get to the cult. Again, the Unification Church is a cult. They believe that this moon guy was literally the second coming of Jesus. Now, since they're the unification, there's a couple of different layers to that, right? For one, they believe in the unification of North and South Korea. Okay. They also believe in the unification of all sects of Christianity, and so the entire world is under one type of Christianity, which would be theirs. They believe that Moon had viewed, I should say, the Cold War between democracy and communism as the final conflict between God and Satan, with divided North Korea as its primary front line, or I should say divided Korea. And so this guy was an avowed anti-communist. And of course, usually when you go that route, you promote conservatism in America and, of course, religious fundamentalism. In fact, there's a publication on the conservative side that is fairly well known called the Washington Times. So now in 1976, Moon established News World Communications, an international news media conglomerate, which happens to be the publisher of the Washington Times. They also have newspapers in South Korea, Japan, and South America, partly, of course, in order to promote political conservatism. So now, according to the Washington Post, the Times was established by Moon to combat communism and to be a conservative alternative to what he perceived as the liberal bias of the Washington Post. Ah, yes, those famously liberally biased Washington Post writers. Yes, those ones who criticized Bernie Sanders for owning 2 houses. Yes, that liberal Washington Post. Are you kidding me? There is no liberal media. There's establishment media. That's what that is. But unfortunately for them, establishment media does tend to operate more in the factual world than, of course, places like the Washington Times and the conservative media outlets. So, of course, they get labeled liberal because they actually do, for the most part, believe in facts, even if their editorials are complete garbage, and tend to target progressives. So, anyway, now, there's more. In 1994, the New York Times recognized the movement's political influence, saying that it was a, quote, theocratic powerhouse that is pouring foreign fortunes into conservative causes in the United States. So they knew this all the way back then. One of the causes happened to be Liberty University, which was saved with this financial infusion from financial hardship back in the 90s. Now, they also created a myriad of groups, front groups, and they say that while Moon was not directly involved in the managing of day-to-day activities of these organizations that he indirectly oversaw, all of them attribute the inspiration behind their work to his leadership and teachings. They include the Freedom Leadership Foundation, an anti-communist organization in the United States, active in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. The Conservatives.com, a former political website in partnership with the Heritage Foundation. The Summit Council for World Peace, an international group active in Moon's effort to unite North and South Korea. Coalition for a Free World, an anti-Soviet group active in the 1980s. The Washington Institute for Values and Public Policy. CA USA International, which is another anti-communist educational organization created in New York in 1980 by members of the movement. In the 80s, it was active in 21 countries. In the United States, it sponsored educational conferences for evangelical and fundamentalist Christian leaders, as well as seminars and conferences for Senate staffers, Hispanic Americans, and conservative activists. In 1986, it produced the anti-communist documentary film Nicaragua Was Our Home. The International Coalition for Religious Freedom is another group. That's an activist organization based in Virginia. Its president is Dan Pfefferman, who has held several leadership positions within the Unification Church of the United States. Founded in the 80s, has been active in protesting what it considers to be threats to religious freedom by government agencies. There's also the International Federation for Victory Over Communism. Gee, I wonder if that's a theme. Korean Culture and Freedom Foundation. They had staged in the 1970s a public diplomacy campaign in the U.S. for South Korea. When it was founded in 1964, former U.S. Presidents Harry Truman and Dwight D. Eisenhower were named as honorary presidents, and former Vice President Richard Nixon, then practicing corporate law, was named as a director. That, of course, relationship will come back in the future in order to try to help Richard Nixon. National Committee Against Religious Bigotry and Racism. I love that. National Prayer and Fast Committees, which supported President Nixon during the Watergate scandal. So again, that relationship there, attempting to defend Richard Nixon. Moon himself defended and prayed for 3 days. I believe it was prayer and fasting for Richard Nixon to try to keep him in office, even though he was, of course, politically corrupt. So understand that there's a reason I gave you all that context. This group has been very politically active in the world and in the United States. And as such, they fund a lot of evangelical movements, religious movements, conservative movements, which happen to be anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-LGBTQIA+, et cetera, et cetera. They call for, religious freedom. But in reality, of course, that ends up usually being no freedom for other people who are not of that religion, and ends up being sort of like Christo-fascist. I think they only want their weirdo version of Christianity and nothing else. And I think that I think that this cult only wants to see one version of their religion be adopted across the world, and I think that's what's dangerous. I think there is a conversion of, their goal, I think, is to convert everyone, pretty much like every other religion. But they have a lot of money and they have a lot of power. As I said before, the people who founded this are billionaires. So now, that said, do not be fooled by their so-called peace. So it turns out they actually make most of their income from selling weapons. Yeah, I know, like, oh no, we're for peace and we're for unification and we just want to make peace with everybody. And by the way, we make money from guns. Oh, great. They also supported racist causes, obviously. Marine Le Pen's Front National in France, and also had supported they had the Anti-Communist League. And guess who was part of that? Neo-Nazis. Yeah, of course. They also supported the war in Vietnam, obviously because, communism, right? But they also supported George W. Bush's invasion of Iraq, which doesn't seem to be their forte or any of their business. The Washington Times also, by the way, publishes propaganda for the dictatorship in Bahrain, which supports religious fundamentalist groups in Syria. So their whole mission of peace tends to be a bit misleading. Their stated mission, okay? Again, since we know that this is the same group that does these weird mass weddings with guns, AR-15s, it's real strange. Real strange stuff. And so understand, this is what I mean when I say the right wing is steeped in conspiracies and cultish behavior, right? This is exactly what I mean. And of course, it's not just, conservative politicians. Unfortunately, you also have establishment politicians. It's the same kind of deal with like the family, right? Which is this weirdo right-wing religious cult that is very extreme, and yet you've seen Democratic politicians and presidents go to their national prayer breakfasts and stuff like that. It's real strange. It's real strange. And by the way, another related cult is the Falun Gong, who is, of course, the other cult that's anti-communist, very right-wing, and they own the Epoch Times. Now, that publication, incredibly pro-Trump, and has been putting out massive amounts of COVID-19 disinformation, and, again, massively problematic. But here's the thing, right? I think a lot of this is to try to protect the wealth of the people that own it. And, you know, look, the Moonies are incredibly wealthy, people who run the movement. So, and of course they want to, as a result, align with the right wing because they are right wing and continue to push, you know, anti-communist or anti-socialist propaganda. And so understand that this is who you're dealing with. This is what they're dealing with, okay? This is a cult. It has a massive reach, gigantic, a huge effect on our media and our politics. And unfortunately, as I said, Trump isn't the only powerful person and former U.S. official or president who have spoken on behalf or have spoken with or has ties to this weirdo Christian cult. Yeah, it's real. It's real. A lot of you know, it's a big problem. It's a very big problem. And I mean, how do you put a stop to it? I have no answers, sadly. All right. Move on to some other stuff here. A couple more stories for y'all. Epoch Times ads are crazy weird. Yeah, that's because they are crazy weird. All right. On January 6th, the violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol building happened. Rioters broke through barricades, went inside the House, smashed windows, speared feces, fought with Capitol Police. So where was President Trump? Well, President Trump was not there. He was not part of the crowd, even though he said he's going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. No, he went home to watch. After inciting his followers to do such a thing, to go and try to stop that certification. So we know where he was, but where was Melania? What was she doing? Surely she wasn't in favor of an insurrection. I mean, she couldn't possibly be, right? I mean, there's this narrative that, oh no, Melania is a victim. She's victimized. She's, or at worst, she's, you know, a gold digger, right? And only, you know, married Trump for his money, which is hilarious because he didn't have any. Come on, he's got like $1 billion in bills worth due, and his companies are all in the red, and he's declared bankruptcy 6 times. Come on, dude. Come on. Oh, anyway. So now, that said, according to her former chief of staff, Stephanie Grisham, Melania Trump happens to be just as bad as her husband. In fact, the ex-staffer revealed in her upcoming book that she advised Trump at 1:25 p.m. that day that a protest of the election lost had turned violent. And she had urged her to denounce the violent turn, reported Politico's Playbook. Do you want to tweet that peaceful protests are the right of every American, but there is no place for lawlessness and violence? Grisham said via text message. The First Lady, who at the time was preparing a photo shoot of a rug that she had selected, replied 1 minute later with simply, no. The rug was apparently more important than what was going on at the Capitol building. Weird. Grisham's book also reveals that she urged Melania multiple times during the transition process to invite Joe Biden to have a cup of tea. Apparently that's a tradition. I don't really care too much about that. But apparently, and this is why this actually matters, apparently she said, no, I'm not going to have a tea with somebody who is an illegitimate first lady. Meaning, of course, she bought into the big lie, because of course she does. She's as bad as Trump. And there's never been any doubt about it in my mind. Always has been. They are a match made in hell. She ain't a victim. So now, something that is interesting about this, more than just a drama, is how this exchange directly undercuts Trump's claim that he was unaware that the vice president was facing danger at that time. Remember, he tweeted out an attack on him at 2:24 p.m. that day. The text message to Melania was at 1:25. So that's an hour difference You don't think she would have said, hey, we've got an issue here. There are people that are, protesting pretty violently in our name, and that's maybe not good. I mean, again, the rioters were there chanting, hang Mike Pence. So, I'm unaware of my ass. Of course they knew. Of course they knew. But look, so now Melania responded to this, by the way, in an email to Politico. And here's what she said. And I love I love what this says, what this tells me. She said, the intent behind this book is obvious. It is an attempt to redeem herself after a poor performance as press secretary, failed personal relationships, and unprofessional behavior in the White House. Through mistruth and betrayal, she seems to gain relevance and money at the expense of Mrs. Trump. Now, is that probably true? Yes, of course. So, I mean, there's that old adage, of course, that the people that you surround yourself are kind of a reflection of you. So if you surround yourself with terrible people, likely you're a terrible person to begin with. And that's why you're surrounded by terrible people, like mine's, like with like. But okay, yes, sure, she probably is in it for the cash. But notice how there's no real denial of the substance. But mistruth. No, it's a lie. If it's a lie, say a lie. But if it's not a lie, you're going to say a lie. It's not. So that's what that tells me. That's very interesting. How it's just not a flat. It's not just it's not a flat out denial. No, this never happened. What are you talking about? Can't say that because you know it happened. Got the receipts. And so all she can do is say, oh, you know what? No, you were bad at your job. And that's why you're attacking me. Failed press secretary, poor performance. She's pulling it out of her husband's playbook because it's exactly the same. That's who she is. Terrible person. Always has been. They belong together. And they can go on together too. Okay. So let's go to some good old-fashioned political corruption. Hold on here. It's interesting. Funny how all the claims of stolen election from the beginning were flimsy at best. Like in Arizona, they said it was called before polls closed because they don't understand daylight versus standard time or time zones. Oh my God, imagine time zones. I don't get time zones. I don't see how that works. Amazing. Or actually, you know what?
Amazing.
Okay. Representative Lauren Boebert has a bit of a conflict of interest. I think we've talked about that before. See, Terra Energy Partners, which is a Houston-based oil and gas company that happens to drill on federal land and therefore gets federal drilling permits and leases, paid Boebert's husband, Jason, almost $1 million in 2019 and 2020 as a political consultant. So now this is not new information. This is according to her latest financial disclosures. And by the way, she had failed to disclose that in 2019. Her husband's work for Terra Energy Partners in her financial disclosure form, and then just recently did so. Huh? You just forgot. Is that what happened? Like, oh, I don't know. I guess I should file my financial disclosure forms that could show a massive conflict of interest. But oh, whoopsie! Oh no, I forgot for an entire year. No, come on. So now, again, not new information. Last month, Terra Energy told the Colorado Sun that Boebert's husband provided contract drilling services as an on-site drilling foreman to Terra since 2017. And Lauren herself has her own business ties to the company, previously named as the registered agent of an LLC that is the current registered agent for Boebert Consulting and Colorado Corporate Records. All right. And now, again, this is all information that we've already known. So, well, okay, now what? What's the conflict of interest other than obviously that? Or I should say, what's an example of conflict of interest? So she's got all this, her husband works for this, this company as a consultant, and she does her own thing. All right, so how does that affect her policy? Why is this corruption? Well, because this week, she began putting forward a package of amendments that would both gut landmark climate legislation and save her husband's business quite a bit of money. That's why. According to reporting from Julia Rock and Andrew Perez in the Daily Poster, during the first markup of Democrats' $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, the first-term Colorado Congresswoman authored several different initiatives. One of her amendments would have eliminated a provision of the legislation subjecting fossil fuel companies to new fees when their fracking operations emit methane. So she's like, no, we can't do that. No. Don't you dare put fees on our methane. How dare you? How dare you? 3 separate amendments would also block another part of the bill that would increase royalties on onshore oil and gas drilling on federal land from 12.5% to 20%, create new bonding requirements for oil and gas companies, ensuring they have, of course, money to clean up any abandoned infrastructure in case of bankruptcy, and levy fines on companies that do not clean up their abandoned wells. All of those amendments, again, pushed by Lauren Boebert, which would have helped Lauren Boebert, thankfully were shot down. But they could resurface when the infrastructure bill moves to the House floor and to the Senate. Oh, gee, would you look at that? Wow, here she is, pushing amendments that would make her richer. Now, look, this is, again, not the only person in Congress that has ever done corruption or even tries to do corruption. No, 134 members of Congress owned up to $93 million in stock in fossil fuel corporations. Boebert's ties to the industries, however, are among one of the most direct of any lawmaker in Congress, because most are like, oh, it's in a blind trust from my investment package. Literally, her husband, though, is a consultant. Now, look, another example of a very direct relationship is Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin's a Democrat. West Virginia makes double his congressional salary from fossil fuel investments in waste coal power plants. Incredibly dirty fuels. And look at that, he is also against doing anything about climate change in the $3.5 trillion reconciliation package. Weird. Oh, so weird. I mean, what's the coincidence, right? No, they're both allied in order to make themselves more money. And this isn't the only time she's tried to do that. Since winning office in 2020, Boebert has helped fossil fuel industry lobbyists push measures in order to weaken climate policy. Those amendments happen to coincide with the company's new drilling leases, the ones that she just pushed. Last week, the Bureau of Land Management approved new natural gas drilling leases for the company on federal land in western Colorado. The company and its subsidiaries are the more than 5,500 natural gas wells in Boebert's district alone. Terra Energy ranks 4th in total methane emissions among U.S. oil and gas companies. That's why, of course, that company, would be paying a lot in fees for methane emissions. So now, earlier this year, Boebert also introduced legislation to reverse Biden's executive order halting new leases for oil and gas drilling on federal land. So now, what sucks about that is that even though there was a moratorium on new leases, the administration still allowed permits on already leased land. So Donald Trump, for example, authorized every single drilling permit that came across the state. Oh, you want to drill for oil? Oh, yeah, sign it. Oh, you want to drill for natural gas? Oh, yeah, well, I'll sign that. I'll sign it all. Clean coal. We take the coal out. We clean it. Yeah, sure. Great. Sign it off. Great. Wonderful. So what sucks is that Biden comes in office and says, well, no new leases. But then you have a mountain of old leases from the previous administration where he's like, oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, do as you will. Seriously, though, climate change is a gigantic problem. And the administration is going, no, go ahead. We already approved those leases. Nothing I can do. Bad. And what's worse is that a federal judge, the new moratorium, the moratorium on new leases, gone, struck down by a federal court, a federal judge. The administration is appealing, but now, of course, thanks to that injunction, now we have an open leasing process. So, I mean, what is it going to take to convince people that corporations have purchased our government and literally serve in the government, as Boebert is? Boebert's just a walking billboard at this point. She is the corporation. I mean, she's literally married to it. And of course, she's out there being able to push legislation to make decisions that directly impact her finances, her business. That is incredible corruption. I mean, it's literally in your face. It's a clear conflict of interest, and it's so incredibly blatant. I mean, oh, my husband's company releases methane. Let's stop fees for companies that release methane. What are you talking about? I'm serving Colorado. I'm serving my constituents. What are you talking? No, you're not. You're serving yourself. You're serving yourself. And yet, these are the same people, by the way, they're like, oh, yeah, you know what? Corruption. No, I got to drain the swamp. Got to end the corruption, end the earmarks, and all that stuff. You are the corruption. You're another example of it. One of the many examples that serve in Congress. Boebert's campaign finance documents also list Boebert Consulting spouse, but had listed his income as NA. So she knows it's a conflict of interest. That's why she's hiding this stuff. And that's the thing. She also claimed her income came primarily from her failing restaurant. That's not true. Terra Energy Partners is one of the largest producers of natural gas in Colorado and has multiple facilities in Boebert's district. There's no way that she's not, that their family does not receive a majority of their income from those investments from that company. Not only that, but the FEC is investigating Boebert for using $6,000 in campaign cash to pay for her own personal expenses, including some, a trip where she spent, where she traveled apparently 38,000 miles in one campaign and had tried to recoup like $22,000 in travel costs. Corruption. Total corruption. And it's right in your face. It's right there. And, we've got to do something about it. And the money in politics. Kick out the corrupt and the money in politics and change the system. All right. That's it. That's all I got for y'all today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. I do appreciate it. Madi Darno, thank you so much. Saying, screw austerity. We've had enough of trickle down. The super wealthy and big corporations want a society. They'll pay proportionally. Agreed. Julie Swenson, thank you for becoming a new member. I appreciate that on YouTube. Hit the join button below for that. Let's see. Fun stuff here. Tempo Dan 918, thank you for gifting the 5 tier 1 subs. Really appreciate that. Goes to help the channel, of course. Another, let's see, Ravaging Wolverine resubbed with Prime. Thank you for being with us for 11 months. Appreciate that. Catalane resubbed for 1 month, tier 1. Thank you. And thank you for the 100 bits. Appreciate that. And thank you, Kia9A, for subbing for a month at tier 1. Thank you. I appreciate that. Brand new members, so thank you. Thank you for supporting independent progressive media. I really do appreciate that. All right. So, hold on. Little girl, no, thank you. Thank you for the very kind $5. I really appreciate that. So, here's Liberty Alliance says the whole establishment on both sides need to be replaced. Yes, I think we can agree on that. I think we can agree on that. I would go further is to try to make the system a little less corruptible. And so yeah, there's some bipartisan agreement right there. We'll go for that. All right. We're gonna raid in to someone on Twitch who I think we will do a Lumi we'll do a KF Logan raid. Haven't done that in a while. And so I'm gonna raid into there. To everyone else on YouTube, thank you. Like and share the stream if you haven't already. Facebook. Also, like our show and like our page, by the way. All of it really, really helps. Don't forget to subscribe as well and share. Check out the clips. Sensible Streamer, hello. We're just ending up the ending the stream, so, and rating into KF Logan 1875. So, all right, everybody. Thank you. Love you all, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See you all tomorrow. Have a great evening.
There's insanity in the control room.
How you like that, boy?
There's some whores in this house. Wet ass keyword.
Please clap.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.